Musical Talk, the UK independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello, it's lovely to be back here on Musical Talk, and a very familiar voice if you listen weekly. I'm sat here with Ross Thibbets. Hello, Thos, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Huck.
Mr. Hicknutson. I've seen a couple of shows. I mean, you've been very busy putting episodes out, which is lovely. You know, you have your busy time of the year. You had Edinburgh.
And you have your busy time? Well, it sounds like you've just had one, to be honest.
Yes.
Show after show after show.
Yes. I kind of reserve shows for the darker months, and we are getting, darker now. It's looking out this lovely black cloud hovering over Chiswick as we talk.
Although I think we ought to say it is actually night as well, so, the darkness would have come anyway.
I want to talk to you about a couple of shows, some which you've seen, some which you're going to see, some of which, you have questions about. So we'll do it in the order in which I've seen them. So let's start with a show that we've actually never really, to my knowledge, we've never really mentioned on Musical Talk, and it's a massive, massive hit in London, and it's kind of been the show that we've never really touched on. Six.
I thought you were going to say the Mikado.
Oh, no Gilbert and Sullivan this week, Thos.
That's what you think. Six, yes, absolutely.
Is Six the biggest hit we've ever had from Edinburgh?
Oh, now that's a very interesting question, because I see that you're going for its impact before we have any kind of conversation about actually what it does.
Well, has there ever been a show from Edinburgh that was playing there and then went to Broadway 2 years after it played in Edinburgh? That's what I'm talking about. Well, and Chicago, and an American tour, and a UK tour, and West End, and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I don't think so, but I will just say that Buried, which was our pick of the fringe from a couple of years ago by Cordelia O'Driscoll and Tom Williams, has just played Broadway.
Okay.
And did tour. I saw it in various places across the country. So it did tour, it's been to Broadway, and they wrote a new musical called You and I, which was on in Edinburgh this year. So other shows have done it. It's rare. It's very rare.
Jerry Springer of the Opera, of course.
Yes, that's a good example. And but there aren't many. It must be said, there are not.
To this level,
and I think I agree with you. Six has had an amazing impact. It is, if not a household name, it's a theatrical household name. I think we should also point out, however, that it's obviously had a lot of money pumped into it, which also helps grease the wheels of getting you into a venue.
George Stiles is a producer of it, which is interesting.
Well, he's obviously seen something in it which he likes.
Yes.
And it is relentlessly commercial, and it's doing something very clever at one level. You'll hear that I'm using my words very carefully here, and I'm sure we shall investigate why that is in a minute. But that, yes, in answer to your question, I think it must be, certainly in recent memory, the biggest hit from Edinburgh, and looks likely to remain holding that title, I'd have thought, for some time. But it's rare as a result of that.
It won the Olivier Award for Best Musical, so it's obviously doing something right, even though I don't think it is a musical.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that, and I think that will become the crux of our discussion when we get down to the nitty-gritty of its speech marks, and there are huge speech marks around this narrative.
I blame Thos for this, because Thos introduced me to the art of proper lyric writing.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
And I kind of stayed away from Six thinking, it's just pop songs, so the rhyming isn't going to be very good. And boy, was I wrong when I sat down and listened to these songs. There were a couple of duff rhymes in it, but the majority of them, they're puns. There's excellent wordplay. My favourite being We're Going to Tell You the Story in Consort, which I thought is an excellent rhyme.
And joke.
Yes, and historical meaning and everything. So the lyrics, I think, are wonderful. They're very, very clever. The banter, I'm going to call it, was very, very clever. Funny. I enjoyed it more than Hamilton. And
was he with you?
Yes, he was in the room when it happened. But you could tell Marlowe and Moss, who wrote these songs when they were at Cambridge University together, you can tell they grew up watching horrible histories on television.
Well, I didn't, because I'm a generation rather before that.
Horrible histories.
Well, I am both history and, of course, I picked up history the old-fashioned way. I read a book or two. But it has to be said, within a British context, Henry VIII is a very canny character, and therefore his wives, to be picking out for this kind of thing, because he is basic historical education in this country even today. Since he was alive, everyone has heard of Henry VIII, and everyone has heard of Henry VIII and his 6 wives. He's also really important in historical developmental terms for the British Constitution. Yeah, exactly, the establishment, all those things. But his personal life has been a subject of great discussion for many, many years. And that doesn't look as though it's going to diminish. And it's the kind of thing that most people have got at their fingertips. They know he had 6 wives. Many people, I would still say probably most people, well, let's say many people, would probably be able to remember what happened to them in the order, divorced, beheaded. Yeah, exactly.
The show mentions that, of course.
Of course. So many people will be able to remember their names and in order. Even just across the country. I went to, a couple of years ago, I popped to a castle in the North Country, and it was the ancestral home of Catherine Parr, the last of the 6 wives.
Survived.
Indeed. Well, she's not around now, in fairness. I don't want to break that to you if I have spoilers. But, yes, it's infused within Britain as a place culturally. It's infused within our knowledge, our folk knowledge. It's moved from history into British folk knowledge, and therefore everyone's got some kind of grasp of it, and that's all you need to go into this. You don't need to know the ins and outs. You don't, there's going to be very little mention of Thomas Cranmer in 6. Some of the other characters who are important in the political world are not in this, and they needn't be.
It taught me more than I ever knew about the wives, which I guess it's done its job, because all we know about is Henry, and we know very little about the wives, unless you have a degree in history, Thos.
Well, I sort of do have a degree in history, and law for that matter, while we're paying attention, so I shall be suing you for your lack of knowledge about history. That's interesting.
It's all quite basic, if you know it.
Yeah, it didn't seem at all clever in that sense to me. I thought what it did was, if you know it, it tells you what you know, and if you don't know it, it tells you what you didn't know. And as you say, the horrible histories are a good example of that. It tells you what happened in an entertaining way. I mean, the history of the piece is quite interesting, by which I mean the history of the production, because I clocked it a couple of years ago in Edinburgh, when it was still in its what might be called its modest phase, when it was still a show which had been put on in Cambridge, as you say, written by Cambridge alumni, and had made a name for itself as a show to see. Unfortunately, I simply couldn't fit it into my schedule that year, but I clocked it as a show I wanted to try to see. I can even remember the venue where it was. It was down at the Apex Grass Market, I think. So I walked past the posters a lot as well.
Do you think Hamilton was an influence for 6, or could it have...
Well, I'm going to tell you, as you know, I've not seen Hamilton because I'm not vastly interested. But yes, in the sense of using the most contemporary of pop styles. And of course, there is an element of rap in it. At one level, everyone is...
What's the Charleston, Thos?
No, more's the pity. I mean, I'd pay much more money to go and see the 6 Wives of Henry VIII doing the Charleston. I don't mind telling you. But actually, I would. I think that sounds really great. But yes, you show me a show that's contemporary at the moment that isn't trying to take a slice of the Hamilton pie. It's, as you know, Hamilton is, irrespective of its worth, is a fad. And when there's a bandwagon, and a successful bandwagon at that, people will jump on it.
They paint it.
Well, I think that's a different musical again, isn't it? Paint your bandwagon. The point about it is, I think that, yes, of course, it's infused by the spirit of Hamilton. Hamilton itself does not make it a good show. It has to have some worth. It has to have some skill. I would make a differentiation. As I say, I missed it the year it was in its modest version, so I was determined to catch it again last year when it was in its big version.
And by last year, you mean 2018? Yeah.
That's right. So the thing that struck me was that it had gone from a very small hotel room environment to one of, if not the biggest venue in Edinburgh. My recollection is it was in the Underbelly in George Square, which is an enormous venue and was packed out to the rafters. And I saw the show. Now, I will say this, I was impressed by it at one level. And the level at which I was impressed by was how it looked, its spectacle. It was essentially a pop concert in musical form, or it was pretending to be a musical that was really a pop concert. And it had many more of the trappings of a pop concert than it did of a musical, although, of course, it's all terribly scripted. So it lacks perhaps that spontaneity.
By terribly scripted, do you mean...
Oh, well, I mean, it is scripted in a way that actually... obviously pop concerts these days are big spectaculars as well, and much of what they say is scripted, but they can have a little
like the
more,
Vegas kind of.
But there's a bit more ad-libbing, there's a bit more responding to the audience, where this is actually still a presentation for you, the audience, to lap up. You're invited to respond to it as you would at a pop concert, but it doesn't have quite the same vibe, but that's what it's aiming for. And many people did think it was the same thing. What struck me was that I was ultimately disappointed by it, however, overall, as a whole, for reasons I'll explain in a minute. But I think I was in the minority in that room. So when it finished, and we all got up to leave, because it's a big venue, big venues take a long time to empty. So I was just wasn't with anyone, I was seeing it on my own. I just listened to people's conversations. And I literally heard people say, that is the best musical I've ever heard.
I heard that too.
Yeah, and I can understand people who don't often go to musical theatre saying so. I suspect it is the greatest musical for people who go to pop concerts that they'll have ever seen. It won't be the best musical that people who go to musicals have ever seen. And I think the reason for that is because, as we say, its conceit, its conception is that you are seeing a pop concert. It's had money pumped into it, so it looks fantastic. The costumes were astounding. The six wives all turn up in these kind of sort of modern bondage leather versions of Tudor costumes.
Saucy Jack and the Space Vixens Tudor style, it reminded me
Well,
of.
actually, yes, that's a very good observation, I think. There were leather ruffs and things like that. There was a live band who were absolutely fantastic. They were in contemporary gear at the back. You
get lights as well, lots of lighting effects.
Indeed, you get all of that, and you get the speech marks, the girl power banter between the characters. But the plot, and forgive me, these are spoilers, I suppose, if you've not seen it, but it doesn't have much of a plot, so it's not much of a spoiler, is that the Six Wives are a pop group. Clever idea, like that. They are arguing amongst themselves on stage in a sassy kind of way, ladies and gentlemen, as to which one of them ought to be the lead singer. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the plot. So they decide that the way to decide who the best singer is, who the lead singer should be, is that they each sing their song, which is the song of their historic life as a wife of Henry VIII. And each song's quite a lengthy song. They felt like they were 6 to 10 minutes each. That may not be true, but they felt lengthy. They lingered, because it's essentially 6 vignettes. And you go through these six wives, and their stories are told very if you know your history, the stories are told perfectly well, satisfactorily. It acknowledges that one or two of the wives really didn't have that bad a time. Anne of Cleves, yes, famously divorced, kept her head, got a pension, stayed friends. Certainly not the worst. Certainly doesn't win the prize for having the worst time. There was a little bit of kind of rivalry about I had a worse time. No, I had a worse time, which reminded me of that I'm Mad of a New song from the Addams Family, which I've never liked either.
Didn't elements that remind you of Music Hall?
No.
No?
No, not at all. I'd be interested to know why you did, but I just want to finish the narrative first of all. So anyway, they get to the end, and then they decide that actually it's silly of them to try and choose a lead member because they've all had a terrible time. And then we get to the point, the moral, the story. And they argue, and it's such a terrible sort of circular piece of logic, that they argue that they're absolutely fed up that they're only remembered as being the wives of Henry VIII. But then they realise that Henry's only remembered because he had 6 wives. And so they give legitimacy to him as much as he gives legitimacy to them, if you like. And that's okay, apparently. And that was it. And then everyone goes home. And I thought, first of all, that's a pointless piece of logic. Secondly, it's not true, as we, even at the beginning of this this conversation, said. He's also responsible for changes to the church, the constitution, la 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 la. We, even now in the 21st century, are still the products of the Tudor age in some senses. They are the foundation stones in a way that the previous dynasties were not. Obviously, a lot happened since then, but. So I don't buy the central conceit. There is no narrative. It has no purpose. It is ultimately, therefore, there's no journey. And I think it's ultimately heartless. I don't see any genuine feeling in it, and there's no real interrelationship between any of the characters. What it is, of course, is a pop concert, and a very nicely executed one with great songs, as you say, with a beautiful craft, beautifully performed by the singers and the live band, marvellously lit, constant action on the stage. They do all the walking up and down, strutting, singing, dancing, goodness knows what.
I presume you got the references for Beyonce and Lady Gaga and Adele, and they're all.
You presume wrong. No, why would I? Why? No, were there? They were just 6 singers, as far as I was concerned.
They're all portraying various pop stars of the modern era.
Oh right, well you see, so
I kind of said
Caruso,
I kind of said that in jest.
Dame Nellie Melba.
I did say that slightly in jest to Thos, but that's the kind of.
Well, you see, I didn't pick that up at all. I mean, I didn't. No, that resonance was completely lost on me, because I'm not interested in. I've never been to a pop concert. So, well, then I still haven't, because obviously this was musical theatre. But this, to me, felt like what I, as an observer, have seen pop concerts are like.
Why is it musical theatre?
I'm not sure it is. It's musical theatre because it's telling people it's musical theatre. It's staged in theatres and not in stadia. It's fully scripted. It will be the same every night.
Yeah.
It can't change. That's the different. You could go to a concert and they could choose to change the running order, etc.
They should have done an Edwin Drood and have us vote for which story we associate with, because that would put it in the kind of X Factor, which is a bit old hat, I know nowadays, but it would certainly make it different every night.
It would be a hard thing to pull off, though, because they're pulling in big crowds. It's not an intimate chamber piece. It's not. It might have been in the first year, but it certainly isn't.
I think
now.
the Arts Theatre's a big crowd.
It isn't. No, but in Edinburgh, it was an enormous venue. And because it's a one-act piece, it can't go into a West End theatre proper, can it?
Oh, is that why they can't put it in a proper theatre?
Well, I'd have thought so. When was the last time you went to see a one-act musical or a one-act show in any London stage? It has to go in a slightly fringier, and the Arts is the closest you can get to the West End that still contains fringe.
I really don't like the Arts Theatre. That was the one thing the issue I had with that theatre. 2 lavatories.
Oh well, the lavatories
really?
have been notoriously dreadful for many years, but beyond that. I think it's a perfectly nice little venue.
Great.
I saw Edwin Drood there, funnily enough. It was great. So let's go back and touch on why it reminded you of the music hall, and then I'd like your view on.
It just reminded me of music. I don't know as much about music hall as you do, but it's just the kind of no set, 6 performers on stage, having a bit of banter between the songs, and a bit of audience interaction, kind of mugging with the crowd. Just kind of elements.
The fourth wall breaking live show stuff, I suppose I can see is more music hall than musical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. So you could also argue panto in that sense. Yes, all right, I'll buy that.
I'm interested to see what the Broadway thinks of this show. I know that it was played successfully in Chicago, and well done for them for for doing it. And I feel a kind of not connection to it. I just feel quite proud that it's this little show that's come out of the Edinburgh Festival, and it's doing incredibly well.
Did you like it?
I did like it.
So what did you like about it?
I like the rhyming. I know that's a really stupid thing. I like the craft. No, that's
not stupid at all, Nick.
I like the craft of the songs. I listen to the songs as I'm walking into Marks and Spencer's and things. And
that's very specific.
I know. It's the only
shop.
It's the only place I go. The rhyming, the puns. There's a wonderful moment in the final song when they do we're one of a crowd together, free to live forever for 5 more minutes, and you realise they're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 within the lyrics and things. And there's some great. Jane Seymour has a line about if you want to see more, stick around and you'll suddenly see more. And it's just they've thought about it, and it's unlike so many lyrics nowadays, which is half rhyming, pop rhyming, slant rhyming, whatever you want to call it. I know some people say it doesn't matter as long as it works, but it does matter, because you, Thos, said if you're going to do lyrics, do them properly.
Oh, I agree. I was right. What a genius. Well, yeah, I suppose that marks it up a step above a normal pop concert in the sense that it isn't using pop lyrics. It's using musical theatre lyrics.
Yeah. And I want to hear a musical from Marlowe and Moss, and that's what they are working on a musical now.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what I think. As far as I'm concerned, a book musical from them will be great. You see, I'm torn by 6. My biggest problem with 6 is that I didn't ultimately like it. And the reason I didn't like it is because the tick box of things which are important to me in musical theatre is the book, the narrative, the drama first. And that is entirely missing here. And because that's entirely missing, the thing seems to me a cynical exercise in popularity and money-making. Now, there's absolutely no problem with popularity and money-making. but you have to tether it to something real, and I couldn't see that. So what I think this is I think it's an Easter egg, and I mean an Easter egg in a true sense of an Easter egg, not as in an extra, as in it is beautifully wrapped, it looks fantastic, but it's ultimately very hollow within. So I love the way it looks. I admire the money and the way that money's been spent sensibly. I admire the fact that it absolutely prioritises performance for the benefit of public enjoyment for the people who enjoy it.
And an all-female cast and band, which is very good.
Oh, absolutely, yes. It's... But we live in a world where that's becoming less and less an issue to worry about. It just, well, not worry about, but it is what it is, what it is. It's fine. I've absolutely no trouble with that at all. Yeah, in one sense, it works very well. In fact, its production values are a very much greater feminist statement than the book, because I don't think the book is a feminist statement, even though it's pretending to be so. But ultimately, its problem is that it is really a slightly drier version of a pop concert. And as I don't go to pop concerts and I'm not interested in pop concerts, going to see a slightly less raucous, raw pop concert in a theatrical environment is not the world for me. So I accept that 80% of the people who go and see this show will say that is one of the greatest musicals I've ever seen. And I will say that 20% of the people who went to see that show or how are seeing the show will be disappointed, or at least go home with a slightly empty feeling. And I know for a fact that I'm not alone in this, because I've spoken to a few people, funnily enough, off the record last year, or this summer in Edinburgh in 2019, who said very similar things to me. Funnily enough, mostly all writers. All the writer friends I've had, or people I've discussed it with, have all said, marvellous to look at, absolutely empty within. And for that reason, and probably that reason alone, I wouldn't go and see it again willingly.
Would you listen to the songs, though?
No.
Okay.
Because I didn't enjoy the show. It would be a very interesting thing if I'd listened to the score before I'd seen the show.
Yeah, like I did.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Yeah, don't forget, of course, the songs are very firmly in the rock idiom, which is also not an idiom to which I quickly connect.
American Idiom. If you get that joke.
Well,
it's a reference to American Idiot, which is a rock musical, which you wouldn't get anyway, so carry on.
Yes, I was going to say, this is really not my area of expertise by any means, and I'm not going to pretend it is. Yeah, I accept what you're saying. The craft of the songs is excellent, and when I saw them, there was nothing about either the melodies or the lyrics which I thought were in any way at fault. I thought they were all really good examples. So there's some genuine talent there. And as you say, the joy for me would be to see them doing something, in my mind, more worthwhile, but certainly something very different, a more traditional book musical. Would you go and see it again?
I would go and see it with someone else again, because I went on my own. I think it's a show that you get enjoyment from, and I love his story. I originally had seats in the dress circle, but they had to move it because someone in a wheelchair needed the street access to sit in the circle, so they put me down in the stalls, and I sat next to a girl who was there on her own as well, and she said, just warning you that I make a lot of noise during this show. First I thought she might have Tourette's or something, but she was actually just a fan.
Oh, right.
So
okay. Uninhibited.
Yeah.
It seems very different to going to see a musical. You don't get this at Sondheim.
No, I'm going to sit here and analyse it very loudly. And that's fine, you know. I know exactly what this show is, and it was great. She was laughing and almost quoting along. It has become a massive.
See, I had to test that in the theatre though, because I years and years ago I went to one of the many revivals of Oliver.
Todd. Yeah.
Well, Oliver in this case, and I sat there. Was it? No, it can't have been Oliver. It was the one that Jason Donovan did. Jesus Christ, Joseph. Yes, absolutely. My apologies. Yes, Joseph. And there's an overture. Maybe it was Oliver then. I can't remember, but certainly I didn't think Oliver had an overture. But anyway, whichever one it was of those shows, it was so well known that people felt that they could sing the lyrics to the overture, which meant I had a terrible time because people were joining in. And once again, that's much more music hall than musical. I had paid a fair amount of money to see a show, and I wanted to see whoever the star was, you know, a professional singer like Jason Donovan or whoever it was. What I didn't want was Mavis from the bank, who's having a nice evening out, singing in my ear hole.
There's a joke
or any
about
other hole.
There's a. Do you know what a meme is, Thos?
I know absolutely what a meme is. Meme. It's trope-related fun.
There's a meme of the Les Mis casting board where every single person is played by the girl sitting behind you, which is quite fun.
Well, yes. Oh. Well, they were. Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of thing.
She wasn't singing along, though. My companion next to me. She was just laughing and cheering, which is great. She was a fan that she was actually listening to the song. She'd
obviously been several times before,
yes,
I guess.
Many times.
You see, that's the thing that I find strange. I can't see what repeated viewing of this show would possibly give you, because you can't be picking up further bits of plot. You can't really be picking up further subtleties in the narrative of each song, which is the nearest it's got to a plot, because each song tells, as I say, the story of the wife,
moment, yeah.
And very often the trials and tribulations that they faced in a very cruel world. But I suppose you could go back again and again to pick up more from the lyrical expertise or some of the melodic flourishes, but that seems insane.
I know why they go back.
Why do they go back?
Because they rotate the cast members playing...
The same cast playing different characters or different people, different
teams? They
teams?
all have various people who will come on each... Like, a friend of mine went the day after I saw it and had a completely different person playing someone else, and one queen was playing another queen, so they kind of...
Oh, they do mix it up a little.
Mix it up. So I think there's a couple of swings that have to know all the parts and will go on...
And do so.
Randomly. So I think they're very hot on social media, so they'll promote that Thingy is playing Catherine tonight, so if you're a fan of that, go and see it. So I don't think they're doing it on purpose, I just think they're doing it because it knows it has fans. So
that's a little bit culty in that sense.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that per se. As I say, I wouldn't go and see it again. No. But then again, as you've established, I'm that 20% that doesn't think it's talking to me.
I enjoyed it. I didn't look at my watch one bit during it. I thought the lighting was excellent. I know that's a very boring thing to say, but it was excellent.
You noticed if it was bad?
Yes. Well, you wouldn't see anything if it was bad. And I just like the songs, and I like the songs because I wasn't expecting to like the songs. I think that was the snobby surprise for me.
But can I ask a question? You have been to pop concerts and rock concerts, haven't you?
I've been to 2 in my life.
Well, 2 more than me, so at least you understand.
It's 3 more than you, Thos, I think.
Well, no, the closest I ever got to a pop concert...
Ivor Novello doesn't count.
No, but the 40th anniversary of the BBC Radiophonic Workshop at the Roundhouse in Camden does. It was the nearest I ever got to a pop concert, yes. In the sense that we had to stand in a kind of an arena.
The last gig I went to was also at the Roundhouse in Camden, and that was to see Post Modern Jukebox, whom you might like.
Was that played in Britain?
Yes.
How did I miss that? Was there's a tremendously fantastic American singer called... Von Smith.
I don't know who.
Von Smith is amazing in my view, and I wish I'd known. If he was playing in their cast, because he's often in it, I would have gone to have seen that if I'd been aware of it, because I think he's got a remarkable set of lungs on him. He has. Yeah.
It was amazing. We had a lovely version of an Ed Sheeran song, who's a popular person.
I'm aware of him. Yes.
We all know who Post Modern Jukebox are. They do kind of retro versions of songs. And Thos...
Call Me Maybe is my favourite of theirs.
You described them perfectly, Thos. You said songs how they should be done.
Absolutely. But it also does show there's quality in modern music.
Yes.
It's not a closed book to me. If it's done in a way that I think is good, it can sometimes show that a song has some worth. As I recite the ones I'm aware of best from the videos I've seen, you'll discover that most of them are Von Smith covers, actually, from... the Post Modern Jukebox collection. But his Call Me Maybe, I think, is stunningly great. They've done 2 versions of that with different singers, but the one with him is particularly good. Also, it was a few years old now, so it introduced me to the concept of the dab.
Thos is demonstrating it right now in the studio.
I can do one. I don't, but I can. I
think we have to put a picture up online of both of us dabbing.
I'm not sure that we do, but anyway, he's also pretty good in Titanium. Mm-hmm. And there's another song of his that he covers, which is fantastic. It's the one about hater's got to hate, and shaker's got to shake. Not the greatest lyrics, but when performed properly by a Von Smith or another, very much to be admired. As I say, so yes, I find that it's interesting. We've been talking about pop concerts because that works in a different direction. It is a pop concert.
That's why I went to the Post Modern Jukebox, because it kind of is very musical theatre, because they are interpreting.
Interpreting, I think we'll go for.
After the word I'm after, as you say. They're interpreting songs in a different way, and through doing them in different styles, you do bring out more of the stories of these songs.
I think that's a fair comment. Yes, funnily enough, I would argue that the but they are... Well, I suppose at one level there's a similarity with 6 in the sense that you said earlier on, the songs have been thought through by the writers. In this case, the songs have been thought through by the performers and the people choreographing. Yeah. I know it's Scott Bradley, and the interesting thing I love about Scott Bradley is that if you know the name Scott Bradley, you have to differentiate him from the other great musical Scott Bradley, who wrote all the music to the Tom and Jerry cartoons in the classic era. Not to be confused with Carl Stalling, who did all the Warner Brothers cartoons. The difference between the two, as I'm sure you know, is that Carl Stalling mostly wrote musical suites for his cartoons, very often lifting songs from the popular song catalogue, whereas Scott Bradley, the Tom and Jerry man, generally wrote music which was a piece of music in its own right, and very rarely borrowed songs or melodic lines from other bits and pieces. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. That's the background to classic cartoon scores, of which I'm a great fan. But the Scott Bradley we're talking about here is the Post Modern Jukebox one. Yes. Yeah, so I'm highly envious of you there, Nick, if I may say.
Well, if they come back again, we shall go.
Please let me know, but I will need to know that Mr. Smith is there, because genuinely, it's not just idol worship, or even idol worship. It is the fact that he's amazing. I think he's an amazing singer, and I don't understand why he's not a household name.
I went on behalf of Musical Talk, you could say, so I picked up the tickets and said, would you like to sit or stand? And I would like to sit, please.
Yes, quite
so
right.
they put me in the arena bit.
Yeah.
Not the arena bit, the kind of...
The chairs.
Yes. I can't stand up for a concert.
Well, that was a surprise when I went to the Proms. When Tim Saywood introduced me to the Proms, I used to sit in the arena. I used to sit in the arena till the show started. What a terrible thing. Before the concert commenced. And then the moment it commenced, you all had to stand. I don't think I could do it now.
No, you're too short.
I didn't stand because of height. I stood because one did, and these days my back.
Right? Yeah.
I'm an old man.
Yes, so what an interesting discussion to go from 6 to Postmodern Jukebox. Thos, thank you very much for joining me on this week's episode.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to say it was 6 of the best, but they weren't at all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.